What are the best and worst matchups for your wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses for Super Wildcard Weekend and the sixth slate of games? It's time to break down right here, right now, as we get another matchup Thursday, only on Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. It's that time of the week to break down your wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses. It's Matchup Thursday. If you missed our look at the quarterback and running back rankings there for Wildcard Weekend, we have 6-game slate. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Check it out there on our previous show. Today we'll move on looking at the main pass catchers for these teams, as well as how these defenses stack up against each other in terms of playmaking potential this weekend with the 12 teams in action. So a lot of good stuff to break down on today's show as we look forward to the playoff version of fantasy football, whether you're playing seasonal or DFS. We'll come back tomorrow, speaking of DFS, looking at our FanDuel cash games, DraftKings tournaments, and prize picks of the week. Speaking of prize picks, crossover Thursday, that's where we break down all these games. So check out all the shows tied to the wildcard weekend especially, and all the great shows here on the network. Crossover Thursday is presented by our friends at PrizePicks.com. Prize Picks is so much fun and it's easy to play. No competing with other players, just you versus projections available. Pick 2 to 6 players and they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. It can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love Prize Picks, and you know that you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. And look for those Prize Picks of the week as we close the week tomorrow on Light Up Friday. Quick programming reminder, we won't have a show on Monday for Martin Luther King Day, and we also have a game on Monday night. Bucks Cowboys there, so we'll break all that stuff down for you on Tuesday. Kind of look at the teams that were eliminated and see where they go from there. That's what we'll do with our reactions there. And we'll save those for Tuesday of next week. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first of the day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. All right, as we said here, it's not really a start-sit situation because we have a small pool of wide receivers. It's a little bit bigger because we know some teams go 3 deep and have some values there. We also have some teams that have multiple tight ends that could have some value this week. So we'll get into all that here. Let's look at our top wide receivers, however. We're going to first, why don't we start with the top 10 here in this first segment. Justin Jefferson, number 1. 2 quiet games for him. You look at his Giants secondary. Dory Jackson has missed time here. Jefferson did blow up in the first meeting with the double-digit catches, went off. That was his real last big game here in week 16. So week 17, week 18, pretty quiet, shut down by Jair Alexander, and then rested for the most part against the Bears once the Vikings were in control of that game, which was pretty early. So Justin Jefferson, first playoff game. You know he's going to be compared to Randy Moss. He's had that Randy Moss-like start to his career. This is his first playoff appearance. So you think he's going to try to go off here. So we look at Justin Jefferson. They're going to make him a focal point. We know the defense is also going to try to contain him, but the Giants don't have a lot here. So Justin Jefferson, number 1, easy. He's been number 1 all season long. And seasonal, he starts the playoffs that way as well. Stefon Diggs, the guy Jefferson replaced in Minnesota. Look, the Bills are feeding Diggs like crazy here. The Dolphins have had a banged-up Xavier Howard play. Their secondary is pretty weak overall. So Stefon Diggs is going to see the ball quite a bit here from his quarterback, Josh Allen. We said that was one of the takeaways from the Bills, that Diggs was actually getting more involved and not less with these extra receivers. Jamar Chase, Jefferson's teammate at LSU, comes in at number 3 here. Easy call there. I know the Ravens secondary can be tough with Marlon Humphrey, but then they can move Chase around here. They've tried to contain Chase to the pass, but he's also blown up against them. So he comes in at number 3 and not the only Bengals receiver that we're looking at in the top 10 this week. So he comes in at number 3 in that matchup. Tyreek Hill, the Bills had some trouble slowing him down here in one of the meetings. So when you look at that, Tyreek Hill is clearly the number 1. Let's hope that Teddy Bridgewater plays. If it's Skylar Thompson, he'll even more separation there. So we're going to look at that. But Tyreek Hill should see the ball as normal here. He's used to being in the playoffs, big spots with the Chiefs. He now does so with the Dolphins. Coming in at number 5 is CeeDee Lamb against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers secondary has been banged up. Carlton Davis has missed time here. Jamel Dean also having an injury here. So Lamb working outside, inside can be very productive this week. So I do like him there as the number 1 as Dak Prescott and Lamb rebound as they're going to have to put up some points against the Buccaneers because the Bucs on Monday night are going to have playing from Mike Evans, who's next on the list. Mike Evans really heated up in his last extensive, meaningful action in Week 17. The 200-yard game with 3 touchdowns, was rested for the most part last week in the meaningless game against the Falcons. So he's ready to go, full speed ahead. He's refocused here, has some time off. So I do like Mike Evans to have one of his Mike Evans game, building on the big 100 times 2 performance plus his multiple TDs. So Mike Evans keeps it coming here. T. Higgins, your second Bengals receiver. He's had good success against the Ravens playing off Chase's coverage. So like that, the Ravens, I don't think, have enough cover men. Peters is pretty inconsistent here. So I do like Higgins as well. Keenan Allen's going to light up the Jaguars. He's going to see high volume here in the middle of the field. He's really struggled other than Tyson Campbell. Is pretty decent, but working Keenan Allen inside puts him at number 8 and high volume there. Another Bucs receiver. So we have 2 Bengals and 2 Bucs, but Chris Godwin, congratulations to him breaking the 100 reception barrier for the first time here this season. So he comes in at number 9. And how about Deebo Samuel? He's back healthy. Good timing for Deebo here to play and be effective against the Buccaneers this week. I would say against the Seahawks this week. Buccaneers getting a little ahead of myself that they could have a matchup here against them coming up here. But let's look at Deebo here and really next week against the Vikings potentially in that 2-3 game. Watch out for Deebo. But Deebo is going to be a big factor. So getting a little ahead of myself there with Deebo. But they're playing the Seahawks this week. He can burn them. Their coverage is based on the outside here with Tyreek Woolen and Michael Jackson. So keep that in mind here. And hint, a 49ers receiver is not far behind him when we're going to break down the rest of the receivers there. We'll do that in our next segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. So that was your top 10 for this week based on the matchups and their usage and their talent for the wildcard weekend and the production you can expect from those players. Our betting sponsor here on Locked On Fantasy Football is BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for sports betting information, stats, news, analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season. We just had a successful run there with Georgia blowing out TCU. You also have basketball and hockey in full swing right now. Basketball, both NBA and college, are really heating up here. So they've got all the action that you want to get in on right now at BetOnline.net. Of course, the NFL playoffs are in full swing. If you love sports podcasts, and you know you do, listening to Locked On Network, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fast and easy way to get your betting information. Head to the website today, use a mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, fantasy football is just one aspect of enjoying the special aspects of pretending you're an NFL manager and making moves here. And well, I'm really geeked out by our new partner and sponsor today's episode. It's the mobile game Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise, well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You can also pretend you're the owner because it's a lot of fun. You can manage a pretty strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, lead your team to glory. You are responsible on Ultimate Football GM for hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and draft, and all the ups and downs of the season. It's all this in challenging, realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free, playable offline, play on the go, and as you want and when you want to. It's really fun. We have a little bit of a league going on with Locked On NFL where you can get really into it, trying to build these teams and really set it up so you have on-field success. So it's a lot of fun. You can create a league just like you would do for fantasy football with your friends and have another layer to fantasy football here as we Play Fantasy GM with Ultimate Football GM. Locked On Fantasy Football listeners will get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's Locked On in all caps while inside the game in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. Download the game. Just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL podcast and get daily conversation on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games and NFL key predictions every Friday. That's tomorrow on these games for Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And on Monday, check it out. Local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes there. So good breakdown of what just happened in a big weekend there. Locked On NFL available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, just like the show Locked On Fantasy Football. All right, let us continue looking at the wide receiver rankings. We hinted that the 49ers wide receiver would be not far after Deebo Samuel. Well, he's right behind him. And number 11, Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk, they can move around pretty well here against the Seahawks. He might see a little bit of work outside, but they can also scheme him open pretty well, playing off Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. So Ayuk doesn't fall very far here. 8 touchdowns in the regular season, breaks 1,000 yards for the first time. Came in that we said is a pretty strong wide receiver too. So Brandon Ayuk doesn't fall too far in that matchup. Jaylen Waddle also doesn't fall too far from Tyreek Hill. So we have another pair of teammates here. So we already gave you Chase and Higgins, Evans and Godwin, Samuel and Ayuk. So now add Hill and Waddle all in the top 12 this week. So Hill, Waddle, interchangeable. They had big years. So they were the two guys in the top 7 in receiving yardage. So big year for Waddle, playing off Hill. And again, let's hope it's Bridgewater that's going to bump up their values. Otherwise, a little bit more Hill than Waddle should it be Skylar Thompson, but not too far. He's a key part of their offense and really going to dominate targets away from Hill when there's not much. They're not throwing to Mike Gesicki or Trent Sherfield or anyone else all that much. And also Cedric Wilson Jr. missed last week's game with an injury. All right, then we get to Christian Kirk. The matchup was a little tough against the Chargers, but they can get him open the slot away from their pretty good corners. The Chargers' pass defense is tough, but I think they'll get it done. So Christian Kirk not falling too far. He's at the wide receiver 13. Here, the Seattle duo of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are next. The 49ers secondary, a little bit vulnerable. They do have Javarius Ward. They did lose Emmanuel Mosley, who was playing well for the season a while back in that Panthers game. So when you look at this, it's Lockett and Metcalf, but you temper expectations, hope that they have some garbage time that they can produce in should the 49ers build a big lead. It was actually too close in the last matchup where Noah Fant ended up getting the touchdown to tighten things up late against the 49ers, but the 49ers didn't score enough in that one to really get the high volume. They could stay in the game a little bit. So let's hope the 49ers do that, open things up here for Lockett and Metcalf to put up those points. Our next teammate completion comes with Mike Williams. He comes in at number 16 on the ranking. So Mike Williams, I do like quite a bit. He does have that back injury he's coming off of. Jaguar secondary is still burnable. He's a little bit big play dependent and touchdown dependent, so that's why he's a little bit down on the list. This is a sleeper that I really like this week. Isaiah Hodgins. He had a nice game the first time against the Vikings. I think he's really operating like the number 1 here for the Giants, and he could be a keeper. If they go out and get a top receiver, I think he could have some value as a number 2. So Isaiah Hodgins, great matchup against that Vikings secondary. Don't have a lot other than Cam Dantzler and Patrick Peterson to contain things on the outside. Gabe Davis, being conservative with him, he could always have a big game scoring a touchdown. But again, the volume has been limited here. We saw he's buried among the wide receiver 3, so we're going to be putting him in that range here. Jumps up a little bit to wide receiver 2 based on the smaller pool of players. But Gabe Davis there, because of the touchdown potential, comes in behind Hodgins. And you look at Zay Jones, also on the outside for the Jaguars. Again, the Chargers can be tough, but Jones is a key part of the offense here with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. Richie James would be your second Giants receiver you can look at, playing off Hodgins, working the slot often against the Vikings. That's a pretty good spot to be in. Speaking of the Vikings, I actually like KJ Osborne a little bit better than Adam Thielen this week. Again, the Vikings, the middle of the field, I think they're going to look more to TJ Hawkinson. Osborne is maybe the guy that you'd have 11 personnel on the outside. And again, with Fabian Moreau also down here for the Giants, it's pretty easy to throw on them on the outside. So I like Osborne more than Thielen. Working back into the slot, Tyler Boyd is their third Bengals receiver on the list. He's had a pretty quiet season. They've also involved Trent Irwin. Hayden Hurst is back healthy, so being conservative with his value. We have our first Raven down here is Demarcus Robinson. So really not feeling a lot with the Ravens here. They haven't had Devin Duvernay. They haven't had Rashad Bateman for a while. Just a hard receiving core to trust, especially if there's no Lamar Jackson. It looks like the case this week. So hopefully Tyler Huntley can give us some return there. Our third Buccaneer is Russell Gage. Julio Jones has been banged up down the stretch. Gage has had some touchdowns. He has a career high in touchdowns from the regular season. I think he'll be involved as a third receiver for the Buccaneers. Isaiah McKenzie, it just depends how much the Dolphins blitz, but when they blitz, McKenzie might have some opportunities as they go 11 personnel, feeding off the single coverage with Diggs, Davis, and McKenzie. And then finally, Josh Palmer, the third Chargers receiver on the list. If Williams is a little bit banged up, needs to come in and out of lineup, Palmer would have some more value in that matchup. All right, there you have it. There's a look at your wide receiver rankings, completing those here all the way from Jefferson to Palmer here that we're going to put on the radar for ourselves in Fantasy Football Wildcard Edition this week, whether you're playing season long, mini season long, or DFS. Again, we'll come back with DFS recommendations on tomorrow's show. Before we do that, we're going to look at the tight end and defense rankings. We'll do that in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. As we've told you before, Built Bars are a delicious treat that are going to give you all the great flavor, all packed with protein, but none of that fat and calories. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you were like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I've got the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. I run 100% real chocolate, so you don't have to give up that. And come in unbelievably great flavors such as churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. What's even better is they are healthy, only 130 calories at 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now, you don't need to wait around to get a box either. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars from Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's exciting news. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box, cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs, 3 of the most popular flavors. If you're close to Sam's Club, you can get even more Built Bars because you can run and get a 13-bar box with their hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later. So good stuff all around. Built Bar, never easier than now to get your hands on a pack of Built Bars. Do it. They're online or at Walmart or Sam's Club. All right, it is time to close the show here on Locked On Fantasy Football. We're going to look at the tight end and defense special teams ranking. No Travis Kelce, no Dallas Goedert. They're both on bias this week. George Kittle puts him at number 1. Great matchup against the Seahawks. Another 2-touchdown game he had. He destroyed the Cardinals this week. Last week. He just is on fire here, scoring touchdowns. So George Kittle clearly number 1 among the tight ends here. Really felt it with Brock Purdy in recent weeks. You had Mark Andrews coming off 100-yard game in Week 17. Did rest against the Bengals last week, so they didn't play him. So he's fully locked and loaded. Doesn't matter if it's Tyler Huntley in there. Let's hope it's him and not Anthony Brown, at least, if it's not Jackson. But Kittle and then Andrews, clear number 2. The clear number 3 is T.J. Hawkinson. You can't throw the middle of the field on the Vikings are going to do that against the Giants. So when you look at that, Hawkinson comes in at 3. Kittle's buddy from Iowa, not too far behind him this week. They got him for a key game like this, and Hawkinson will be a factor against the Giants. Speaking of the Giants, Evan Ingram, the former Giant, who comes in at number 4. Big season as a tight end, 1 for him. His best season in the NFL. Staying healthy as well in Jacksonville. So he comes in number 4. They'll try to get him involved against the Chargers here if the Chargers contain their wide receivers on the outside. Dawson Knox has been coming on. Now, if it's a blitz being game, maybe it's a little bit less Dawson Knox, and maybe the Dolphins will adjust and play some zone here. Knox has been very involved and effective of late, so he comes in at number 5 at tight end. You have Dalton Schultz looking pretty good as well, and I think they'll have to have him as a key factor. The Bucs have had ups and downs against the tight ends this year, so he's in the top half of the 12 tight ends this week. As he's at number 6. Gerald Everett got a little bit more involved last week, and he's kind of like Dawson Knox. You want him to be right behind the wide receivers at times, and it's a little bit inconsistent with the Chargers' usage of him, but this could be a good time against that Jaguars defense. Hayden Hurst, I'm kind of lukewarm on him. I think it's going to be a more wide receiver game and dump offs to Joe Mixon. The Ravens were pretty bad against the tight end early this season, but a little bit better now. They have Marcus Williams back at safety. Speaking of the Ravens, Isaiah Likely, your second Ravens tight end to look at. He was involved quite a bit with Andrew sitting. Maybe they'll use more 12 personnel to attack the Bengals this week. That's probably their best bet to get two athletic receivers involved in Andrews and Likely. Go Noah Fant next behind Likely. I mean, it's just a matter of how much you're going to see his usage as they have multiple tight end sets, but Noah Fant comes in there. Then I have the one great rookie tight end that we have, Cade Otton. We'll see how they involve him quite a bit here for the Buccaneers against the Cowboys, but the Cowboys have been tough against the tight end. I think Otton will be behind them a little bit. Mike Gesicki, touchdown dependent. Will he get the ball enough? That's a big question. You have Daniel Bellinger. He had some moments early in the season, but then they had that eye injury, kind of phased out a little bit with the wide receiver, so he's down near the bottom. And then Donald Parham Jr., the second tight end for the Chargers, also makes the cut for the radar here at the position. So there you have a look at the top. Really, it's an uneven number here, 14 tight ends that are on the radar with, again, Parham and Likely being the multiple tight ends that you look at from those offenses with the Chargers and Ravens. All right, at defense here, you have the 49ers, number one, at home against the Seahawks. They're the best playmaking defense on the board with their sacks and potential for takeaways against Geno Smith. The Bills are second. They might get Skylar Thompson. They would maybe bump up. But even if it's Teddy Bridgewater, I like them at home to be effective. The Cowboys, Buccaneers, it's pretty tight here. Tom Brady has been making some mistakes, throwing some interceptions, getting sacked. So you look at that, Cowboys are there. But I also like the Buccaneers defense. Dak Prescott has been throwing pick sixes. He's on a run of interception streak. They can get after him a little bit. So they come in at number 4. I do like the Bengals and Ravens, both of those defenses. I think this will be a bit of a grindy type game. I do like the Bengals better because I like them to win. We'll see what the quarterback situation is. Ravens did come up with a few loose balls last week in Cincinnati, so they're back-to-back in the rankings. Our next back-to-back, the Chargers and the Jaguars. So definitely the Chargers defense is better overall in the playmaking one, but the Jaguars defense has had 3 interception returns. Well, one was a fumble return, but one by Rayshon Jenkins. We had the Tyson Campbell return there against the Texans. And then we had one, of course, last week to win the game and win the AFC South there against the Titans. So that was good to see. Then come the Vikings here. Again, the Giants can move the ball, and the Vikings don't have a lot of playmakers, not going to get a lot of sacks here. So they're pretty low in the rankings here at number 9. You have the Giants behind them as the underdog in that same matchup with some struggles in defense. Seahawks come in at 11, only because there's a chance of Brock Purdy. There could be a chance for a turnover, maybe a sack there with a pretty good pass rush. So they're at number 11, but not feeling them. And finally, the Dolphins playing the Bills in Buffalo, not feeling that at all this week. So there you have it. There's a look at the tight end and streaming defenses rankings for the week here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing the local insights you love, the national spotlight with daily conversations of the biggest NFL stories, which nothing is bigger right now than the playoffs. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day here the rest of your Thursday. Good luck in putting your lineups together for your mini playoffs or DFS, and we'll help you with DFS advice as we close the week tomorrow on Lineup Friday.